So, today I will be reading a slew of more translated poetry. I have a mix this time of some older writers on top of contemporaries. I think historically I've been reading mostly temporary, or rather contemporary poets in translation. I think the reason for such largely because they could use the most help in terms of gaining awareness and just making readers more aware of all that is actively being published in the world. Um, a lot of my fixation on the project of translated poetry has arisen as a result of, poets shouldn't be or be expected to be marketers. And I think the more that poets and poetry publishing tries to be aware of what's necessary for promotion and marketability, the less good the poetry becomes. As a result, there are so many fantastic presses out there and so many contemporary translations and projects going on that simply don't have the ability or um, the skills necessary to actually tell the world about themselves. So, um, I will continue to, read these poems because I find that just giving people an opportunity to listen to poems from around the world is going to continue to broaden our horizons and introduce ourselves to new language possibilities as well as um, refreshing kind of new ways of thinking. Um, so I'm going to start off actually by reading this author who has just absolutely uh, captivated me for going on 3 years now. She's Austrian. Her name is Friederike Mayrucker. This particular book is translated by Jonathan Larson, but I've read quite a few collections on her. She is this like beautifully experimental writer who does a lot of like diary um, and hybrid nonfiction poetry. Her lyric is astonishingly transparent in the sense of like it's an immediate observation in one line and then just no context image in another. So I hope you enjoy. If you want an example, uh, these are what some of the poems look like in the collection. But this is probably one of the more approachable of her collections that I've read. Anyway, again, for those of you just joining, this is Friederike Mayrucker, titled Scardenellen. I open the door crying and it falls at my feet, comes to me. The humility, and at the threshold the naked waters. Hold, shadflower, my heart hunched, thumping with tepid downpours as once in D, pale is what I have become, and still full of longing. While the pallid sky at the window, humbly submissive, even not one iota of pride in me, since I idle and quiet over the mountains where the drinkable spring blossoms, or with tears the day, rises the day, the morning whose wild soul enclosed in my dark room, while outside the spring with its mighty sprouting goblets, because it tricks the soul, hold, while in the arms of mother, of the birds which breeze on past my window, guess merely at their nature, in the islets, the white mats of thousands of snowdrops, white snow, drops fields in the islets, such fistlings, one misreading, of the Vienna woods, in fact, the obits of the white flowers, two-winged, your black hand, how you at the door of the one cafe, on past the Franziskanerplatz, in the gloaming dawn, black coat. I drive through one postcard gifted trees, this sweetness, Latin lover, a Tiroler Hof with affection, and inflaming youngling with black lock of hair, the nerving and dancing all unawares. I am the ovaries sleeping, says Edith S. Am soul sick. Animism. Am all unawares on the prairie linger the sheep, all unawares am I rapidly. Nature switches its lines, equals times beside itself, out of breath, can see how it makes skylarks from snowflakes, young leaflets out of frost flowers. This tousled whispering of the tulip goblets first in deep night, the nearness of your voice in deep night, the sorrow of your heart. See the tender violets in your eyes, thus you grasp me by the hand, while, like one wildfire, Kandinsky's exotic birds of 1915, the inflamed breast of verses leaned against the hills, while green living ivy. Very hard to follow the poems as like a logical act, but very pleasant to, at least in my experience, to listen to the poems just as like a series of words. Um, I think she's probably one of the first writers that I've encountered publishing actively today that's really doing justice to the phrase stream of consciousness in a way that I think would beguile and astonish even, someone like James Joyce himself. I think stream of consciousness is one of the most like overused acts and descriptions of writing because so few people are willing to indulge in the sheer limitlessness that is true stream of consciousness. And I really don't see any restraint in the transaction between mind and page in May Rooker's writing. Um, Here's a poem titled My hysteria is the craving to be loved, is the fear of not being able to write anymore, is the fear of having to die. Hyperventilation. In the nocturnal foliage of the lindens, the nightingale or moon, light. One eye-opening eyelash over the crest of the fly, its faceted eye staring at me, assessing whether I would kill it. One reversible image by Escher. One fly is one fly in summer. As soon as mother says one fly is more dangerous than one tiger. One fly is one fly in the winter when sisterly feelings, I chase it away. Even when exhausted to death on the checkered tablecloth of the kitchen table, I spare it. I look long at it, cannot identify with it. See Marguerite Duras. It crawls very slowly into the field hospital's cabin, as I myself do when utterly exhausted. Weakened by one provision toward home, I crawl. In the countryside there was one honey trap that hung from the ceiling, black with flies that had suffered the most undignified death. It looks at me with its faceted eye. Forgive me that I chase, hunt, despise it. I too, the soft herbage, go to the dogs. After one photo by Brigitte Stefanek, subject of hysteria. I'll spare you reading the whole book of hers, though I could probably dedicate an entire one of these readings just to May Rooker. I love thinking with her writing. She does so many things that just fixate and fascinate me. I love seeing patterns in a writer, and May Rooker is full of patterns. So, for instance, all of the times that I used the word one um, in that poem in particular, but in also all of the rest of her writing, she just uses the number one, but sometimes she interchanges the number one with the pronoun I. And there's no real distinction between that except for context. So I chose to read all of those ones as the number one, but you could also choose to read all of those as I. So I fly or I fly in summer, so on and so forth. I think that's a very beautiful thing is the gift of having something complicated to think about. Um, Give me just a second while I fiddle around because for some reason my computer is just auto like putting to sleep my monitor, and I'm not really sure why because I am actively using this. Okay, hopefully that fixes things. Thank you for bearing with me. So Mayrucker is currently, as far as I know, she might have died very recently, but I think she's still alive. But she's actually no, she had to have died because I'm just gonna look this up because it's gonna drive me nuts otherwise. Yeah, she passed away 5 years ago, but she was like 96. So she's one of those writers that um, kind of spanned quite a bit of kind of two cen- centurion kind of modes of writing. We have the between world wars and like immediate aftermath of World War II, and then the kind of uh, intolerable mode of trying to understand the mechanisms of an evolving world as we hit like the 70s to 90s era of writing. But we're going to go a little bit further back in time to the perhaps classic Russian of Anna Akhmatova. This is just a selection of poems titled Way of All the Earth, translated by D.M. Thomas. Um, I haven't read or spoken much about Akhmatova. I don't really have much strong or negative opinion about her. I think I've just historically tried to focus people who need more uh, awareness about them, and but today I was just feeling her. Song of the Last Meeting. My breast grew cold and numb, but my feet were light. On to my right hand I fumbled the glove to my left hand. It seemed that there were many steps. I knew there were only three. An autumn whisper between the maples kept urging, die with me. Change has made me weary. Fate has cheated me of everything. I answered, my dear, I'll die with you. I too am suffering. It was a song of the last meeting. Only bedroom candles burnt. When I looked into the dark house, and they were yellow and indifferent. In memory of Mikhail Bulgakov. This, not graveyard roses, is my gift, and I won't burn sticks of incense. You died as unflinchingly as you lived, with magnificent defiance. Drank wine and joked, were still the wittiest, choked on the stifling air. You yourself let in the terrible guest and stayed alone with her. Now you are no more. And at your funeral feast we can expect no comment from the mutes on your high, stricken life. One voice, at least, must break that silence, like a flute. Oh, who would have believed that I, who have been tossed on a slow fire to smolder, I, the buried days' orphan and weeping mother, I who have lost everything and forgotten everyone, half crazed, would be recalling one so full of energy and will and touched by that creative flame who only yesterday, it seems, chatted to me, hiding the illness crucifying him. Um, that should I think that'll do, but that was the poem in particular that I was kind of reminiscent of. My last week was full of, various debilitations due to my own chronic illness, and so, um, I think of I don't know, sometimes it's just nice to read poems that are very, very closely paralleling, the strife and turbulations of your own life. Ever since I was really young, I always turned to poetry because in a lot of ways, poetry mirrored my own thought patterns. Um, I've never really been someone who thinks particularly linearly in the world. And so being able to just parse, intent and meaning behind a handful of words and an image worked for me significantly better than to find like a collection of essays, for example, um, or a novel or what have you about, exact mirrors of my life. Um, and so when I read things like that, especially rereading them when they become more poignant, more pertinent to my life, um, it does give me that reassurance. I think poetry is kind of born to give that form of reassurance that even if the language of affliction is fairly new, um, suffering itself is not something that is remotely new. Um, that there are millions upon millions of entries and ways in which suffering has been documented throughout time, and perhaps even one will align with your particular slant of it. I genuinely forget if I've read this person in my current kind of reading series, and if I have, I don't I'm not really going to apologize for more poems, but this is a Peruvian writer. His name's Gaston Fernandez, translated by K.M. Kasia. This is from probably my favorite translation press right now, which is World Poetry Books. And the book is titled Apparent Breviary. I do want to start off with just one kind of beautiful way in which, so I love reading the translator notes prior to collections, and especially because some of these limes are just beautiful. But I just want to call out one sentence in particulars, which is in the translator's introduction to this work, a first sentence of a new section is reads, "Unexpected encounters with divine silence are not exactly what I read poetry for." Um, I think that's just a fantastic standalone word. But in the point of divine silence, a lot of these poems are very sparse on the page. And so I'll be reading quite a few. 24. A bird, a motion, flight and song is the world. Singular, point, vanity. There, movement and song do not exist. There is neither flight nor stillness. I see my place taken by an infant, the period's capacity to establish impotence. 61. To divide the window is to see the same fog. The weight is the same. The parallel interrogation localizes, not divides. On the on the contrary, traverses the brow of he who looks at my brow. Parallelism. Road. In my place, no one moves. Never once blood, always man. Never once blood. The measure. Sleep. A strong box. The other. Man. Always one in those places. 78. To look without distracted eye. To not look. Only there the center will be a pall. Nameless place. Speech. So the body remains without distress, without aura. I think it's nice to find an excuse to give yourself space for silence. And I think poems that really play with the white space of a page are after the quest to grant that permission. In a similar pace, I'm going to read this very cute tiny book, which is titled Himalaya Poems by Ko-un. Um, it's a collection of it's like a travelogue of poetry, translated by Brother Anthony of Taizé and Lin Songhua. Um, however, very just meditative and kind of beautiful works in their own right. Little snippets of every day. Calming the breath. Poised like an aging bear, climbing a tree, hanging on tightly, I collect my breath. Poised like a bird, stretching its neck out and pecking at food, I collect my breath. Heaven and earth are full of breath. When a dragon chants, a cloud rises. When a tiger whistles in reply, it becomes the wind. While breath moves in and out in this way, the breath grows calm, the breath grows calm. From the foot of Mount Kunlun onward, I grew miserly with breathing. Exhale, inhale, calming the breath. meeting a downpour. I'll give you everything. We were on the Chongtong Plateau, pitch dark on all sides. Thunder, lightning, and rain poured down. Not one of the many gods, anywhere. Not one of so many memories. It was dark. Over my head, lightning cleft the air. Quang, and again, quang. I could not take a single step. My body trembled so hard that I fell gravely ill. Cora, turning, turning, Cora. The eye of the typhoon in the sky is turning. The nucleus of matter is splitting and turning. The earth is turning. The hands of the clock are turning. In Tibetan Buddhism, they turn clockwise. In Bon, they turn counterclockwise. Cora. It takes 3 or 4 days to make one circuit around Mount Kailas, but two bored lamas leave at dawn and arrive back at the same place in Darchen that night. Turning, turning. This world is turning. I am turning. I hope uh, the lower key, I think I typically find something of a mix of poems to present. I try to grab a few that are more complicated, a few that are more imagistic, a few that are more narrative heavy. But um, yeah, I fear today a lot of the work that I selected are all fairly simple on the surface, um, straightforward poetry, very linear narrative or diary representations of a poet's mind. Um, really, I'm very tired of the bombardment that wartime and media and all of this captures in all of us and demands from us. So I am seeking respite in these poems to relax in, seeking poetry to soothe me. I don't know if it's really working, but um, it's it's what I have. So this is, building the house with the tools I have available. We're going to go yet further back in time to a fantastic El Salvadorian poet, Claribel Alegria, translated by Carolyn Forche. Um, this collection is titled Sorrow. Sorrow. I wish I could believe that I will see you again, that our love will bloom again. Perhaps you are an atom of light. Perhaps your ashes barely exist. Perhaps you will return and I will be ash, an atom of light. We're far away. Our love will never happen again. Give me your hand. And this starts with an epigraph by Cesar Vallejo. Today I like life much less, but I always like living. Give me your hand, my love. Don't let me sink into sadness. My body has already learned the grief of your absence, but despite the blows, it still wants to live. Don't go away, love. Meet me in my dreams. Defend your memory, my memory of you that I don't want to lose. We are voice and echo, mirror and face. Give me your hand. Wait. I have to rearrange my time until I reach you. And if I die and dream, and if I fall asleep and dream that I am dead, and in fact have died and don't know it, and I awaken to a light that is not mine, to an unknown land that ignores me, would I fight to go back to my peaceful place, thinking I am trapped in a nightmare? Or in a light instant will I know I am awake, that at last I have awakened from life's dream? Happiness, happiness, a peach in all its splendor. I really love Claribel Alegria. Again, on the theme of simpler poems, um, I don't really have a tremendous amount to wax on about her. I think a lot of what she intended to say was on the page. I do think it's particularly baller to put a poem titled Happiness in a collection titled Sorrow. And I think that is the most of a political statement that I'm trying to make. We're going to read Maria Borio, uh, titled collection titled Transparencies, translated from or by Danielle Pirati. This is an Italian poet. Aquatic Center. Stretched out on the bed, you see shapes, curves that enter and spirals that evade. The transparent organs overhead open, become a soft line chasing itself, cleansing the breath's dark colors, the color of blood, or that depth of flesh where bees breed. Nothing regenerates, but all is prolonged, infinite in the line that cleans objects and makes things to think, inhabit. A huge egg, for example, breaks without spilling, and whiteness fills the angles of the ceiling, opens an arch, a door between continents. Between life and water, this building shines in endless light. You could open it. Open yourself to a tongue of harsh tones. Return to the other's round sleep, finding again tones like windows on the sea or the suspension bridge over the park where people stretched on the grass are bees and the sun's warmth wards off death, even if in years, millions, one day, it explodes. You follow those other lines of species as though knowing to be born won't be a violence, but a phenomenon of gaze. And from the bed you let sex crawl the contours of this building, in its white understorm rays, the star just before it explodes. Life is everywhere, in the curved line we inhabit, as though thinking. Now, as I think of them, the bees leave my mouth. Exposed. Like everyone and no one, they remain. There are trees among the hilltops. But now trees is an imaginary word. From this dingy strip of grass, see the rough trunks, fixed, fragile in the mud like legs after a run, after a fight. The bark burns the parts the body of a fighter, a rebel from Myanmar, movements without voice, on video clipped and closed. You rewind the hill over the sundials, over this field, this land of tyranny. The wood you touch kneels and twists. Bone bends, tendons flex. The knees as human voice doesn't breathe or ask. You grab the word for tree, press it against the flesh. The wood grain turns white, breaks. Knees feel the weight of bent ribs. The boy, the enemy who wins in the end. the air flawed like everyone, and no one, clear as division, the trees tremble. Borio, I think something that's very unique to her writing was that Borio does a really like classically traditional sense of poetry and the evocation of nature and the natural, um, but fills it with the language of the very modern understanding of like physics flows and this connection of everything between like particulate matter and all that kind of business. Um, Much of the rest of the collection also invokes a sense of like religious and divine um, interference, I suppose. And I think that's really interesting to kind of juxtapose all three of, the physics, the nature, and just the godly. When I was growing up, I stopped attending any kind of like religious kind of thing by the time I was probably 5 or 6. I grew up in a very small town, small community, and my parents just had a falling out with some of the other churchgoers. And as a result, we stopped doing anything with religion. And so, as a person who spent their life focused on literature, it is a very fascinating thing to read all of the ways in which someone references the divine, whether it's religious by nature or simply the uh, feeling of a spiritual worship of the godly. Um, Having no particular attachment to it myself, even though I do absolutely want to, if not do, believe in some form of authoritative power over all of us, even if I'm not worshiping it, I'm just simply acknowledging it. I don't have a real tap on that anecdote, but it is just always funny to me. I think just 2 more collections. The last one I'll read from, I think, will be a good, throat clearing noise. Um, this one is by, uh, Congolese from the Democratic Republic of the Congo writer Chichaya Utamsi, uh, translated by Peter Thompson. It's titled "The Belly." Political leader, and so a lot of these writings are very politically oriented, um, or about uh, political themes in various capacities. But also, Tomsey writes in effectively just very long poem, like without titles. And so, in that way, I'm going to kind of just pick a section and see where it takes us. This is Belling the Soul. I know of some who lose their stomach for fear they're not the one true navel, that turned a spring into a baptismal font, a knife with no throat to open, a body with no lease, no value added, no shipping costs. It happens when the loam opens the seed and suddenly the sky rolls over the grass with spindly children, borrows a lipstick from the pink laurel bush, goes before all on the path, sells spice to the clouds so that the heart sneezes and the belly quivers, and the pristine idea of love made known, and whose fruit is guaranteed to wear nowhere the seal of sex, so tattoo my stomach with the shape of the breadfruit tree. Who's surprised that a knife bloodies not the spring in the lap of a grieving mother? There was nothing but stagnant water, so that my poem might be poem of blood, I arm myself with a knife, whom to kill at blood's call. The call is heard no more, covered in cataracts. The knife replies only through the quicksilver of a silent fin in the tide, pushed back by a hardening sand, one of mirage and fossil. The sea is far from the body it jeers. Is this only a betrayal? Fate betrays only the man who tried to have fate his own way. In what lap can I keep my head cool? In this lap, near this wellspring. Ah, no. This is where unionism drops my head, and I find it improbable that water too will betray me just because you bemoaned the withering of a water hyacinth that I wore as necklace over my body. This was the sign of my political mandate, that flower at my heels, because it comes down to me along this length of water. I cause myself wounds as I soil the water that cleans my soul. You were straight as the hand I had on the pulse of the fire, dividing each of our bodies into water lily petals. Wherever the sky leadens the horizons, who might have opened that lap to me. I will drink the water. I'll guzzle away my head. Who has this kind of lap below the belly? Who has this kind of lap below the belly? It will come to pass that I pawn my head, since this won't be a betrayal. Will I get enough for that type of lap? Who has that type of lap below the belly? It will come to pass that I tote my head to the hat maker, who will top it with an ice cap. Meanwhile, I dine alone. Yes, to sardine on fennel, watercress with frog. Shut that dog up. Repeat, if you don't mind. I no longer know exactly something volatile. Yes, sardines on some fennel. No fatty flesh. But girls with flesh of liquid Benedictine who take their gin dry. Mainly nothing green. To graze, to obey. No, no, never. Odd guy. Odd poem. Um, but wanted to give at least one that was a little bit more energetic. um, I mean, sincerely, I love the context of the poem being that, this is a political leader from the time of like Congolese revolution, writing about how he wishes he I mean, like, literally wishes he had someone who had a lap for him to rest his head in that he could trust safely. But metaphysically, thinking more about all of the conditions which spawn, a comfortable lap, which is, food and like availability of being able to relax without fear of violence. Um, yeah, it's a fantastic work, which I've been very grateful to see more proliferation of Congolese writers being translated into English lately. That said, I'm going to move on to my final book. This is a book that I'm actually currently writing a review for, which should be out in a literary magazine in maybe like 6 weeks. But this is titled Cute Girls Watch When I Eat Aether. By the Swedish, I believe. Mm, Yes, Swedish um, author Maria Hardin. Apologies. Yes, Cute Girls Watch When I Eat Ether. These are short poems. Maria Hardin is this kind of beautiful, uh, very, very, very short, aphoristic kind of poetry length. Trans poet, I believe. Just really interesting to think about, especially picking this as the juxtaposition with something like Tom C's longer kind of ramblings. Glossolalia. The bees are dying. Can you feel it? I want to press my tongue gently against green mesh. I want to bite softly into a sponge of any color. I want to rip and chew and spit that sponge bit out of my mouth when it becomes small and hard and no longer satisfying. The rose is a rat. The rat is a rose. Saturn is rising in the eighth house. Glacial erratic. Fetishizing nature words. Crooning. Algae adiantum as my maiden hair washes down the drain. Keening. Slime gifts are prayer psalms of goo. ASMR. Devotional. Glop. Oozing. Holiness as collapse. Blush. The Poetics of Horse Girls. A poem I never write. I'm a weird pony, smearing my face in rose petals, pink like shame. Suspended, not suspended. Pulling at the hem of time, unraveling myself in the process. There is no health, you whisper, only living, my sick, sick rose. And finally, spirit, specter, wraith. I wish I had touched you more, touched everyone more, but I've never been the kind to take initiative. Again, this is Cute Girls Watch When I Eat Aether by Maria Hardin. Uh, and this has been a poetry reading. I hope this has been relaxing, soothing, or at the very least, a nice excuse to not look outside or look at headlines for 45, 50 minutes. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this or listen. I will, as always, put this recording up. I try to put them both up on YouTube as well. Um, yeah, you're so welcome. If you have any requests for future readings or just anything that you think would be cool, give me a shout. I'm always open for ears, but otherwise, I just want to encourage folks to take more time out of their days for poetry. And on that note, uh, much love and poetry to all of you. Take care.